Welcome to another podcast from Oxford International Centre for Publishing. In this episode, I'll be talking to Claire Phillip, freelance children's book editor and career coach. We'll be discussing strategies for building resilience, positivity, and dealing with emotions that might come from continuous job seeking, specifically for the creative industries and publishing, but I'm sure there's lots that would be useful to anybody hunting for work. So whether you're about to graduate or if you've been looking for a job for some time or you're thinking about changing jobs, hopefully there'll be some tips and tricks in there that'll be relevant to you.
Hello, I'm
Hello.
here today with Claire Phillip again, and we seem to be sort of coordinated in our thinking quite often. I'm sending out newsletter posts to the students, and you're putting posts on LinkedIn, and I keep reading them, thinking that we're somehow aligned. And so I asked you to come and do another guest podcast with me again, and so the topic today that we were sort of broadly thinking about is sort of resilience and how to stay positive when trying to apply for work in publishing. And we were both just talking before the podcast started about the Flip report that's come out with some industry statistics. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So I think if I start, really, the newsletter that I've posted out to the students that really kicked this off was to do with thinking about resilience. And so I was thinking, like, how can we teach it if one really can teach it? And the background sort of reading that I did suggested that there are some things to do with resilience that can be helpful. And one of them is to basically not be under any illusions that you're going to have challenges and failures. So if you start out from the premise that things are going to be difficult and that you're maybe going to fail. And I linked that back to I when I was working in for a digital media agency in the tech world, there's a kind of philosophy of fail fast. So it's failure is like natural part of developing ideas, and the thing you want to do is like fail quickly so you can get onto your next idea and improve it and learn from those mistakes. So that was like one of the first things, I think, is to just accept that failures might happen. And then there's another point that seemed to come up frequently, which was to think about how to stay kind of optimistic and maybe see challenges as a learning opportunity. And I think that can be quite hard when you're in it. So when I think it's not to deny the emotions that you might have if you come up against a particular challenge and you're really disappointed about something, you don't get the job that you'd applied for, or in a sort of academic context, if you didn't get the grade that you were hoping for in a particular thing, or just not the positive feedback you're expecting. The question is, how do you think about the process that you went through and the things that you did, and think about how you might be able to improve them. And if I think about my personal experience, there was one time I applied for a job and I got really, really carried away. It was a marketing role in publishing. I got really, really carried away with like setting up like a little Twitter account and setting up a little website that was my CV, and kind of being like, I could demonstrate that I can market myself through this online through this website and this Twitter account. And it really like didn't get the response that I thought it would from the publisher. I thought they'd be really impressed by it, and they were kind of like, it was a bit much, like you didn't need to do all that, just a CV would have, like a CV and a cover letter would have sufficed. So like that was a good learning lesson for me, I think, to know that sometimes like being enthusiastic in a kind of just a very over the top way, and I'm a very much a look at me kind of person, sometimes that it can be too much, and that like that you need to be a bit strategic in where you spend your energy and the things that you do.
Definitely.
So but still, I learned from it, I moved on. That's probably not the way that I would apply for a marketing role in the future. Or definitely not.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think one of the things I say to people when I'm like mentoring them a lot is that I think job searching is a little bit like dating.
Yeah.
in terms of it can bring up quite a lot of similar emotions in terms of, I love what you just said about like it's really easy to be like super enthusiastic and like have like feel really open, and then if you don't get the interview or you don't make it through past the interview stage, and then you get that horrible feeling of rejection that can come. It's like, and when you said the word strategy, I was like, yes, because you have to be able to keep moving and keep taking steps towards the goal that you're working towards, while navigating very, very normal human emotions like disappointment and like all like the feeling of rejection when it comes up and stuff. It's all part of like the spectrum of life. And actually, if it's, I think learning to move through really uncomfortable emotions is a huge part of it. When you said about, like, so you had this idea that you were going to have your CV website and show all this evidence, and if it doesn't work, it can feel really like there's, I don't think there's any denying that that kind of rejection can be really painful, and the frustration of not getting what you want when you feel like, just give me a chance. I hear that a lot. People say, just give me a chance. It's being able to not suppress these emotions, but also not let them take over to the point where you can't take like positive action. I have a phrase that I quite like, but like, well, I have two. The one's like perseverance does pay off, and also like I worked with a life coach once, and their like motto was no dropouts, no cop-outs. Like, don't drop out on your goals, don't cop out on the small tasks that will get you there. So it's, I think we live in a world where we get so much so quickly. We can, if we get, I don't know about you, but I get annoyed if an internet browser doesn't open in like a split second. I'm like, oh, I'm never visiting this website again.
Our virtual learning platform did that the other day. It started just being a 30-second delay. You'd click on a link and it would take 30 seconds for it to load the page. And I was like, are we back in the 1980s? I can't be dealing with this. I don't have the patience.
Yeah, and it's incredibly frustrating. But actually finding the career you want, and it is a long-term game. Some people are so lucky and they get they graduate university, or they don't go to university, and they start in a career that they stay in and they love, and it's fine, and that's great. But a lot of the time, especially that the working market is just changing so much. It's becoming more and more digitally focused, but yet those kind of soft skills like personal skills are still so important. So
in fact, I think that they're going to be the differentiator for people applying for jobs in the Gen AI wave, because I was speaking to somebody at the London Book Fair who said that they'd got some entry-level jobs recently and they'd had 10 people apply with perfect CVs, no error, perfect cover letters, completely tailored to that particular job. And so the sort of like the difference, the margins between each of them was so small. And at that point, if you had been a person that had maybe like had some contact or networking experience with that company in the past, if you'd been able to demonstrate those interpersonal skills in real life, I think those might be the things that would really swing it. And in fact, that's I think if you think about what Gen AI can do, you've got Grammarly, everybody's got Grammarly. There's no reason why there should be any mistakes in anybody's CV. There's no reason why it should take like an entire afternoon to just tweak a CV cover letter to tailor it to a particular job. So if everybody can do that quite quickly and rapidly, then it is going to be the human contact that's going to make a difference.
Completely agree. And even online, there's more and more events being held online that you can go to, and sometimes I think it's not always just about there's certain names, I won't say them, but there's certain names of people who I know are trying to get jobs in publishing. I see them on my LinkedIn page like actively, and I just know that eventually I'll see their congratulations banner come up, because apart from anything else, I don't know much about them at all, but I know their names.
And exactly. Exactly. And they don't have to be doing a degree. They don't have to, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. They don't have to have experience. They don't necessarily have to be like UK based. I know exactly who you're talking about. There are a handful of people in any given time who will be doing the networking. They'll be putting in the work. They'll be making sure that their name pops up. They'll be commenting on people's posts on LinkedIn. They'll be turning up at London Book Fair. They'll be going to book machine events. They'll be doing all of those things that mean that they that from out of nowhere they appeared and suddenly we know their names. We know who they are.
Yeah.
And you're right. You know that those are the ones that will get a job eventually.
Yeah. And it's tricky because I think there's quite a bit, there's a lot of people on for publishing. There's kind of like there's Instagram, Twitter and LinkedIn. I don't use X. I don't use it particularly. I use LinkedIn the most, but I know that a lot of my friends in publishing are on Twitter all the time. And depending on someone's preference, whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter, I do think there's ways to be really present and active on those, whichever one is the kind of your natural go-to one you like the most. I like LinkedIn because I like being able to write longer form posts, whether or not people read the whole thing or not. I'm much better at, or I feel much more confident communicating with the invisible world of LinkedIn.
I'm the same.
Then finding like a really nice photo and on Instagram and then writing a caption that people will look at for more than 5 seconds, all that kind of stuff. So depending,
I keep thinking about what it is about, because Twitter and Instagram feel like they should be fairly similar. And the thing that I struggle with Instagram, is the visual side of things. It's like, oh, do I have like 10 minutes to make that text into a picture? But maybe I'm just being, maybe that's just like the way my mind is. But the other thing is the networking part of it. Like I can't seem to necessarily work out the way of finding communities within Instagram. Yes, there's hashtags, and yes, you can comment on people's individual posts, but even something as simple as sharing someone else's, like resharing someone else's thing on Instagram. You can do it on your stories, I think. So then it's there and gone really quickly, and so there's no like permanent evidence that you've done it in some ways, or you can screenshot it and repost it that way. And again, it's not quite so connected in a networking sense. I don't know, maybe I'm just using it wrong.
The networking stuff is, I think so personally for Instagram, I use it mostly for research. So because now you can set up folders and stuff. So every time I see someone interesting or a publisher doing something interesting that I think would be that I want to remember, or I find a page, there's so many great pages now that do book reviews that have sort of like got 40, 60, 80k thousand followers now, where they do these brilliant roundups of all the books on like the best books of spring, or the best dinosaur books, or the best diverse book on a particular topic, or something like that. And so I use it for research a lot, but I guess it's not networking. In some ways it's being like a little bit sneaky, in that I find people, either publishers or people who work at publishers, and I'll go and look at who they're following and to see what they're interested in. I'll look at commissioning editors' Instagram pages, particularly because quite often you'll see who they're following, and you just start to get, I guess really it's like building up a picture of who someone is and what they're looking for, what their interests are. And you can't force yourself to be someone you're not, but actually and I think this is kind of maybe used to be an in-person skill, when you'd meet somebody in a room and you're networking and you're like, they're wearing those kind of clothes, maybe they're like a beautiful flamboyant scarf, like they're going to be really arty potentially, like maybe I'll talk to them about artwork, or so, like these kind of like really subtle cues that actually you can do on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram. Obviously people only put out a really small part of themselves online, but who they're following will be like who they're genuinely interested in a lot of the time. So I use it, I do quite a lot of snooping on Instagram in that way, which isn't networking, but it's kind of trying to get insight into what people are thinking, I guess.
I mean, it is all good industry information as well. It's And the things that you were saying about the bloggers and the book reviewers, like if one was to get into an interview situation and be asked, okay, as is quite often the case, like how would you market this particular book? If you know of the names of some Instagrammers that you would send a review copy to, or some book talkers, then those kind of contacts and just awareness of those is going to be really useful.
Definitely.
Because again,
no, I was just going to say, especially like discoverability is a huge thing for publishers. How are they going to get their books in front of audiences and stuff like that? So if you're clued up on social media and stuff, it's just another thing to be able to talk about, having that awareness of what's going on in the industry. And obviously things change so quickly. I just saw, actually, I can't remember the woman's name, but it's a TikToker with a huge following has just been made the I don't know exactly, I think it's creative director or art director of TikTok. So she's so like that's just incredible to me. I think that like something like that, like you would never have risen to the top of like one of the biggest like social media companies. You'd have had a career in that industry before, but somebody's like worked their way up. So just like, I'm not really sure what my point is there, other than that not getting to know the social media platforms and what people are doing on there, I do think can be a real advantage to either be able to potentially, mostly if you get to an interview, because you're just going to be able to have really good conversations, or actually in live networking, you're going to know who's just won the Klaus Fluger Picture Book Awards, or you're going to know what the results of the Flip survey were and be able to have conversations with people like that. So there's so much online that people can digest, I think.
So we were just taking us back to our topic we said that we were going to talk about, because I think there were a couple of things that you mentioned there that made me think of it. So we were talking, my resilience piece ended with how to maintain one's confidence and optimism to carry on in the face of adversity, which sort of linked really nicely to the post that you'd put up about how to kind of like talk yourself into staying strong. Tell me a bit more about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think I started the post with if you tell yourself that you're not going to find a job in publishing, you're not going to find a job in publishing. So it's that self-talk element where it's really easy to slip into saying like definitive statements like that to yourself, where when things don't appear outwardly to be going the way you want them to be. And it kind of ties back into what I was saying before, like this can be a long-term game. Like you do have to do things like the research and be reaching out to people and go to these network events and stuff. And you have to keep going. And it's the self-talk element is a huge part of it. And I'm not saying that I get this right all the time at all. Like I'm in a little group, a WhatsApp group with some people I've worked with, previous colleagues, and we all quite frequently say to each other, when you send off a piece of work, do you suddenly think, oh my God, it must have been awful? Or and then they all reply, yes. And these are people who've worked in the industry for like 15, 20 years. And
but it's that imposter syndrome. I think that came up in the Flip report.
It did, yeah. Nearly 100% of the people who responded to the survey said that they'd felt imposter syndrome at some point. And so I guess for me personally, it's having someone who I can reach out to and say, oh, I'm feeling like this, and having like a kind of support network, whether that's in your like immediate life, or whether it's like friends or support at university, or sometimes just like having someone to talk to about it can take that pressure cooker feeling down significantly, enough to carry on. And I guess the main point of my post was, if you stay in that mindset where you keep telling yourself you can't do something, how are you giving yourself an opportunity to take the active steps to get to the place that you want to be? And it's like, how do you eat an elephant? Like, it's one bite at a time, or
Also,
or
I know these all sound a little bit cliche, don't they? But there's an
yeah.
element of you got to fake it till you make it.
Oh
And
my
then,
goodness.
but what you
Yeah.
described was even when you make it, there's still an
Yeah.
element of faking it. And I know,
Yeah.
I think I did a bit of training for Publishing Scotland,
Mm,
on P&Ls, so profit and loss
mm,
spreadsheets. And afterwards, I remember having exactly the same conversation,
mm.
having delivered it, going, did that go well? I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you think that I'm used to delivering these sorts of courses to students who possibly aren't
Yeah.
as knowledgeable on the topics. So to do
Yeah.
it for a more professional level, I'm
Mm,
like, was that the right level? Was that,
yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And that's after 10 years of teaching and 10 years
Yeah.
of teaching the topic and being fairly confident on
Mm,
with my knowledge of a particular subject. So I
yeah.
also I do remember one time when I was at university, one of my friends had kind of changed her mind about which course she wanted to do. So she needed to redo her university application and she needed to write a personal statement. And she was just sat there in front of a computer going, I don't know what to write. And it was
Mm,
like, I know what to write. And I just wrote it for
mm,
her.
mhm,
I'm your best friend. I know all your
mhm,
qualities. I know
mm,
that you're absolutely
mm,
obsessed with these particular
mhm,
aspects of the field that she was interested in going into, and that you spend your spare time researching it. I know
mhm,
what your motivation is. And
mhm.
sometimes it's just easier to have that external perspective,
Yeah, for
like
sure.
like you said, to have somebody else to sort of go to in those moments where you just got you've
Yeah,
got self-doubt to be able to see yourself clearly.
for sure. And I think a lot of the people who work in publishing, especially in the most creative parts, so in editorial and design, and not well, to be honest, so much of it is creative, really. I think a lot of creative personality types. Um, there's, I'm sure there's like I don't know whether you've experienced this, but a lot of the people I've met in creative departments, they're creative. They tend to maybe be a bit more highly sensitive to emotions potentially. Like you don't necessarily get like cutthroat salespeople or the finance or CEOs in the career. There's like a definite like
Yeah.
personality type. And I think it's kind of like a life skill that I've developed outside of publishing, to be honest, that I have to apply to my work. Just I'm definitely a highly sensitive person, and I think that as more and more people understand neurodiversity, I wouldn't be surprised if there's more of an understanding that diversity is there's a huge scale, and that maybe someone doesn't necessarily have a specific neurodiverse trait, but there will be elements of different that you might sit somewhere on a certain spectrum, and then the more we learn about neurodiversity and the way we function and learn and work, the more we can realize that actually sometimes this self-talk is directly related to our makeup. It's a huge topic, really, but I know with ADHD, I've got my friend, she's an editorial director now. She's had an ADHD diagnosis, and rejection dysphoria is a real thing with ADHD. So there's an understand. I think it's like a self exploration as well as like an outward looking to finding work and everything. So it's kind of like getting to know yourself and how you deal with emotions and your self talk. Um,
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does.
Yeah.
So I've got something on my wall which came from the Think Like a Monk
Mm,
audiobook that won the Nibbies a couple of years ago. So I downloaded it, and it's no
mm,
complaining, no criticizing, no comparing. And
mm,
I do remember there was that like one of the things was that if you said something or thought something negative
mm,
about a person, I think it was in the context of that audiobook that I was listening to, you have to then come up with like 20 positive things to
mm.
overwrite the one negative.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
I think. Yeah.
if you have it, as a sort of practical tool in terms of like how to try and get out of negative thinking, is that it maybe find not just one silver lining, but like try and
Yeah.
find as many silver linings about something
Yeah.
as possible.
I love journaling for I think there's two parts to this where one, yes, if you just sit complaining and comparing, you're going to dig deeper into like a mindset that isn't going to be helpful. But at the same time, you're having those feelings, and not allowing them in some way, shape, or form can sometimes make you a bit emotionally constipated, for like a for want of a better phrase. So I really like Julia Cameron. She gets people to write morning pages, like free flow journaling. She says to people to write 3 pages in their journal every morning, just whatever they need to say. And I've done this for I don't do it anymore because I've got a 15-month-year-old. I don't have the time. But when I didn't have a child, I did do it consistently, and it really made a difference to shifting how negative I was feeling. Because actually this might be quite relevant, because it was during the lockdown, when all of my freelancing work, everyone said, oh, we're putting all of our freelancing projects on hold, and I'd just moved house, and I was like, kind of did go into like a 24-hour, maybe longer, like rocking myself, like what am I going to do kind of thing. And doing the journaling every morning just managed to like expel that negative self-talk I was having. It's super easy to spiral, and that helped a lot. And also just sometimes I think we're really uncomfortable with going through full emotions. Like I don't think we're taught particularly how to deal with feelings of depression or deep sadness or real anger, like rage, for example, or like true grief. But actually they do pass. I'm not saying it's easy, it's actually disgusting. It's a disgusting process to have to go through. Yeah. But if you keep going and you find the things that work for you, everyone will have something different. It might be dance, it might be the journaling, it might be gardening, anything that can help you move through these negative self-talk conversations. For me, it's definitely for journaling and being out in nature for like as long as I possibly can, and not watching too much TV or being on my phone too much. So it's kind of like a self-care topic in a lot of ways, isn't it? And then when you've allowed something to fully move through you, you can then, my husband has said to me before, it's like, I just need someone to tell me what to do. And I'm like, no, you need to be calm. And then if you know the logical steps, people do know the logical steps. It's just very, very hard sometimes to get to that point. And resiliency, I think, is such an interesting topic, because life can be really hard. It can be really hard. And it is like finding what works for you and keeping going, even when it's really hard.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things I often say to people when they're trying to apply for jobs is like, you as soon as you get made a job offer, as soon as you get a job, you will not care about all of the rejections. Like all of these no's will like disappear by the wayside.
And it just doesn't matter anymore, does it? Once you get to where you want to be. Absolutely.
And you have to apply for every single job like you didn't get rejected to any of them in the past. And I've been doing this job spreadsheet for the Brooks students for I think it was the August of the summer after COVID. I think it was August 2021. So I think almost 3 years, not 2 3/4 years. And I go and I just grab the jobs off of I think it started out off of about 12 publishers' websites, and I've added a few since then. So I go through those job sites once a week or once a fortnight, and I just go through all the entry-level roles and I paste them into a spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet is up to like 850 jobs. So if you have been looking for a job in publishing over the last 2-3 years, that would have been 850 opportunities to get them. And yes, a lot of them are in the southeast of England, but more and more of them are at regional offices. There's more that I see that are in different parts of the country. The salaries have started to creep up a little bit, but not by lots, but they have started to creep up a little bit. So there are opportunities out there. And also there was one, I don't know if we mentioned this on the last one, there was one of my students who came to a career development talk who said that they'd applied for so many jobs and they hadn't followed them up. And one day they were like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna I'm going to call all of these 20 outstanding jobs applications, and I'm just going to follow them up with emails or call them. And this particular, so she went through them all one by one, and one of those companies was like, oh yes, we wanted you to do the job. We wanted to give the job to you. They didn't even interview her. They just saw her CV and they were like, yep, the job's yours if you want it.
Really? Wow.
And it was so if she'd have just gone, oh well, I haven't heard back from them, like maybe they probably would have eventually got around to contacting her. But it just goes to show that, you know, sometimes you can talk yourself out of things,
definitely,
thinking that you haven't been successful when really you have, and that, you know, you have to keep the faith a little bit sometimes.
When I worked for Bonnier in London, I interviewed for a different job there and I didn't get through, and I remember feeling absolutely terrible afterwards, actually. But then 2 weeks later, I got a phone call saying, we'd like to offer you a different job for a different imprint. Could you come in and just have a chat? It's not even an interview. And
I think that strategically is the other thing. Like every single job opportunity, whether it's exactly the kind of role one wants to do or whether it's slightly different, slightly tangential, that is an opportunity for you to be in front of human beings, speak to them, and them get to know you and like you. And I've seen that quite a few times where people have gone in for particular interviews and been told, we're not going to recruit you for this job, but we like you so much, we're going to give you another one. Or we're going to create a job for you, even. That happens sometimes. So
I know someone recently who interviewed for a key accounts role, and they had quite a lot of editorial experience, and they ended up creating an editorial / sales position for them, which is not what they all advertise and isn't traditionally what they would do. It's one of the big fives. So like that wasn't a job that was out there, but she had so much editorial expertise that she went with. She'd done quite a few courses. They were like, actually, you could be really useful, and we're going to kind of give you a split role and see how that goes. And
that's amazing. That, you know, that's almost the dream job. You're out talking to people, buying the books, and you're coming up with the ideas for the next frontlist titles. So that's incredible. So I think with all of these things as well, there's one thing that, like, I think everybody trying to get a job in publishing needs to be quite aware of, and that is that publishing is a very small world in the UK. Everybody knows everybody else, and that can work in your favor if you impress somebody, and it can work against you if you're rude or dismissive to somebody. So I think, and you know, that doesn't mean sort of be fake and to everybody, but I think you should, or people that are looking for employment either sort of currently or in the future should be quite aware of this fact that it is a bit of a closely knit community. So you don't want to piss the wrong person off, basically.
I've heard the phrase, like, don't burn bridges quite a few times, like when I've been working with people who've been leaving and like leaving for another role or something like that. Like, don't burn bridges, because, and I've seen it, I've worked for 2 publishing companies, and now the teams I've worked with, probably there's like 16 different I know people at like 16 different publishers now. So it's very, very true. You might think that it's a small little bubble, but actually, and I'm sure on LinkedIn people will pick up on names and all that kind of stuff like that. People definitely pay attention, for sure.
Actually, there was a really lovely article in the New York Times following the London Book Fair, where it was basically the London Book Fair is just an opportunity for people who work in publishing to hang out with their mates.
Oh my God.
And it was just, it's so true. Like, why do people go to the London Book Fair? Well, it's just to catch up with all the people they know in publishing in real life and have a massive like schmoozy get together. So yes, there are important deals being done, but that's not what most people are doing. That's like, oh, I just need to go off and speak to my friend. Like, that's that's why you're there.
That might be a good quick segue to talk about the Flip survey, where I'm sure I'll just skip to it, but I'm sure it was 77% of the respondents of the survey enjoyed their work often or always. And I think that is definitely my experience of publishing. And what you said earlier, Helen, about when you get the job, when you get the opportunity, everything that came before does fade away. And actually, a huge reason I work in publishing, apart from the fact that I just love the creativity, is the people who I'm not saying that every single person is perfect, but I'm in groups with people I've worked with at 2 different places, and some of them are like daily contacts, and I've freelancing for 5, I'm in my 6th year now. I still speak to people I've worked with every week in the past, because people do make real friendships. They've got a quote here that publishing is an inspiring, energizing environment to work in, and they work in children, so they particularly in the children's section of the industry, where we feel we're offering imagination, joy and hope to young people. So you've said to me before that it's an industry that you can really, like, it's so fulfilling and purposeful, and books are so important, aren't they? Like, they're such powerful tools. It's no wonder that so many people do want to work in publishing, because it really is, it's not perfect by any means, but there is a huge amount of job satisfaction, I think.
We were because we're always trying to balance hope with realism in these conversations, aren't we? So that like that, it is an amazing industry. We both love what we do and have made real true friendships with, like, honestly, I academia is is a privilege to be working in this particular area, and I feel it really passionately that it's my obligation to help people not just learn stuff about publishing, but to help them get jobs in publishing. That's that, because that's, it's not an abstract topic. And whether it's jobs in publishing or maybe jobs like within academia to go further up with PhDs or studying, I'm always happy to help give advice on those aspects as well. But the realism side of things, it like there are some quite like damning statistics in that flip report, aren't there? So
41% of respondents felt that their day-to-day tasks exceeded that on their job description. I've definitely seen people working way beyond their working hours, and 58% of respondents did not feel their current salary could cover their living costs. So it's always tricky to talk about publishing and getting into publishing when there are definite problems in publishing, like there are with probably all corporate professions. But one of the things that I was so excited to see the flip report, and I thought it was so good, was just how it's becoming more acceptable to have these conversations. And change can take a long time. It can be slow, but at the same time, the more people have conversations like this, and the more this kind of information is put out there, and especially as publishers are becoming more committed to having diverse books, and they're trying to make sure their workforce is diverse and their culture is inclusive, they're not going to be able to avoid these kind of conversations.
And that's
not going to happen overnight, but it's an integral part. If a publisher truly is being inclusive, their salaries and their duty of care to their staff is going to have to increase significantly, because
that's 60 that was it, nearly 60%, 59% or something of respondents said their salaries,
58
58% said their salaries wasn't enough to live on. And if you I'm thinking of my spreadsheet, if I think of the percentage of jobs in London then that's probably like 90% of jobs in London. So I think one of the things about salary being realistic is to think about jobs that or to look for jobs in smaller publishers that are away from London would probably be yes, you might get a slightly lower salary, but I'd imagine the living costs would be a lot lower too. And that might not be the dream job at that first entry level, that if you, one of the benefits, if you can find a role at a smaller or independent publisher, is you're likely to get a lot of experience in lots of different parts of the publishing. So you wouldn't just be like focusing on marketing plans. You wouldn't just be doing like some sort of like typesetting tasks that are fairly repetitive. For a large publisher, you'd get to be doing lots of different things, helping out with, you know, planning for London Book Fair, you know, doing a little bit of typesetting, doing a little bit of marketing, bit doing editorial and commissioning sort of tasks. And so I think that that might be something strategically for people to think about when, you know, we're talking about strategies, weren't we? You know, think about the non-obvious places.
Not obvious things. Yeah, there's so many organizations and companies that have links to publishing, even if they're not directly publishing companies. Like I mentioned, like Nielsen Bookscan, for example. I'm not saying that they're going to have jobs that are exactly what someone who maybe wants to work in editorial might look for, but there might be a role.
So Ingram Spark, I saw one a job for Ingram Spark advertised recently, and Ingram, like they're like, they have lightning source, print on demand, they working with all of the big publishers, and they have visibility of all of the self-publishing industry as well. A lot of ebook sales go through. So if you were within a role at Ingram's, you would have such amazing insight into what was happening within the publishing industry in a way that just working for one publisher probably doesn't give you, actually.
No, definitely.
I would love to work there, and they're an amazing company to work for. The people there are so lovely. So lovely.
Yeah, really. Yeah, exactly. So and I think if you're just coming, if you haven't looked into the whole ecosystem of publishing, there would be so many different companies and opportunities that you just wouldn't be aware of. And I think more and more, I think one of the things I wrote about as well is there's so many digital skills. If I was starting out from scratch, I'd be learning about podcasting, audio, books, editing. I'd be learning like basic video editing. I'd want to know Adobe Suite like really, really well, like do. There's so many online tutorials and trainings that these like technology companies have. There's just that. I guess that's my point, is there's always more you can do.
But some like playing devil, some of those tech skills can be expensive to learn, especially like the Adobe Suite is got quite a big subscription price attached to it. But there are other tools which are free, and the concepts kind like Canva has like a freemium model.
Yes, exactly.
So, you know, lots of you can be doing some quite whizzy things in Canva fairly easily. And it's not necessarily all about tech skills. I think what we were talking about earlier, you know, it's, you know, doing a little bit of the legwork, and I know that can be in terms of networking, getting to know people, putting your face out there. That can you know, that can be scary, especially for introverted people who feel like they don't like to put themselves out there. But there are things you can do that maybe don't require you to be, you know, jazz hands all over social media. That are still like gently and consistently involving yourself in like asking people questions. Have you got any tips? If you want to do that like by private message through LinkedIn or via you know, private message through some sort of route, or there's there's SYP mentoring schemes you could sign up for. There's lots of things like that where someone might be able to take you under their wing basically and just give you a little bit of gentle advice that's not quite so public, I suppose.
For sure. I should probably mention actually that I'm a mentor for Children's Book North this year, and applications are open for the next 2 weeks. I think they close on the 14th of April. So anyone in the North and Scotland can apply for that as well. So there are things out there that people are trying to help.
Yeah, that's just reminded me that SYP asked me if I'd be a mentor again for them this year, and I will, but I haven't told them that yet.
Yes. Yeah,
That's on
no,
my to-do
definitely.
list.
Yes, yeah.
Right, so in conclusion, was there anything else on the flip report that we wanted to talk about? Can you?
I don't think so. Just other than I'd really recommend people check it out. It's a beautifully designed document as well. It's all the information's really easy to take in. They've used lots of really good infographics and explaining their findings visually. So it's I guess the only other thing was that 97% of people had said that they'd experienced imposter syndrome. So anyone who's not sure about whether they can go into publishing or worries about their abilities and stuff like that, know that you're not alone, and that even people working in the industry doubt themselves a lot of the time. So it's a completely normal feeling to have, even if it's not nice to feel.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. Actually, that's just reminded me. There was a statistic, I can't remember the exact number, about burnout in there. So I think that's sort of, what we've been talking about: staying optimistic, being resilient, working through emotions, and and finding strategies to do those kinds of things. That can be quite emotionally draining, and it can be, it's a career that can take its toll. And possibly because we love it so much, we let those boundaries between work and not work fall by the wayside, because it's difficult to sometimes separate the two. So I think maybe what might be quite useful for people to think about, in the same way as you've got your journaling, it's like, just to, like, when I'm looking at these jobs for students, I just have, like, I go through maybe an hour and a half on a Thursday morning. That's my time, hour and a half. And that allows me to, go through every single job publisher's careers page, scroll through all of their lists of jobs from entry level to director level, see what's on there, pull out the ones that are entry level, think about who I know that might be interested in them. And it doesn't take me that long to do. And I'm not looking for a job. So if you can set aside some time to do a particular task, even if it's just half an hour once a week, to check in with people on LinkedIn, maybe post some messages, commenting on the things that you're interested in, showing that you're present and following. It doesn't have to be a long time. It doesn't have to be taking up every minute of your your spare time.
For sure.
It's quite achievable. It's those small little things, isn't it?
Definitely, yes, definitely. All adds up, for sure.
Cool. Okay, well, thank you very much for all of your advice, Claire. It's been lovely having you here today again to speak to.
Thank you.
We're so, like, I just feel like we come to these points in the calendar year.
We arrive at the same thoughts a lot of the time, don't we, at the same time?
Yeah. So it's lovely to be able to talk them through, and we'll put in some links to all of the things that we've mentioned, like the flip report, in to go alongside the podcast. So speak to you again soon.
Yes. Thanks, Helena.